Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Bernanke, thank you for all your service during very hard times. I still want to ask about some other risks to the economy. You know, the biggest banks in the country have reported huge profits over the last couple of years, but just this week they reported some staggering numbers. Wells Fargo's profits jumped 19% from last year. JP Morgan Chase profits jumped 31%, and Citigroup's profits jumped 42%. Now, some reports have indicated that a big part of those profits have come from the bank's trading activity. In other words, not from boring banking, but from trading on Wall Street and elsewhere. So are you concerned that these biggest banks are loading up on big risks again, or is there another explanation for this spike in profits?
Well, let me just say that we are quite aware of these portfolios, and we are addressing them in at least two ways, or more than two really, but one of them is that we have just finalized new capital requirements that banks have to hold against these assets for sale, these securities, which should provide protection. We have done stress tests where we assume that a December 2008 type of financial shock hits, and so there's a huge drop in asset values. And we have stress tested the banks, you know, again, to see do they have enough capital to cover, protect themselves against big losses in their securities books. The other thing is, of course, you know, is that we are working hard with our colleagues to put the Volcker rule into place, and that will restrict proprietary trading.
So let me just say, though, Mr. Chairman, the question I'm trying to ask about is whether this indicates they're loading up on risk. And I very much appreciate that what you're telling me about are the ways we're trying to regulate the risk when the banks take it on. Maybe I could ask this slightly differently. And that is, yesterday, Secretary of Treasury Jack Lew said, and I want to get the quote right, if we get to the end of this year and we cannot, with an honest, straight face, say that we have ended too big to fail, we're going to have to look at other options. Do you agree with the Secretary of the Treasury?
I don't know about the timing. Maybe I take another year from now, but I've said to you in an earlier hearing that, you know, there is a strategy. Dodd-Frank lays out a strategy. Basel III provides additional support through capital, et cetera. But if those things do not make us comfortable about the status of these largest firms, yes, I do think additional steps would be appropriate. Then
we need to look at other steps. As you know, I've introduced, along with Senator McCain, Senator Cantwell, Senator King, a Glass-Steagall bill, another tool in the toolbox to deal with too big to fail. But I think at least now we've got some time on this. The Secretary of the Treasury says by the end of the year, you say maybe a year longer, but we've got to keep this one under examination. Fair enough?
Yes, I think we obviously want to look at all tools. I think that there's probably more scope for capital.
Yeah.
If we're not comfortable with the status of these firms.
Good, and fair enough on that. I want to ask you, as you know, the Federal Reserve and the OCC announced last January that they were stopping their investigation into the systemic foreclosure fraud and that you'd reached a settlement with the largest mortgage servicers in the country. And just last week, the OCC announced that 52,048 people just in Massachusetts received checks so far under this settlement. And it was an aggregate total of $41 million in compensation, or about $800 a family. Now, that's $800 a family in a state, Massachusetts, where the median home income is $324,500. I'll do the math for you. That's about 0.2% of the purchase price of the average home in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, it's my job to look out for families in Massachusetts, including helping them get basic information about whether settlements made on their behalf by the government are fair. And to do that, 6 months ago, I started asking for basic documents about the investigation and to see what the foreclosure fraud investigation had uncovered. how many people had lost their chance to save their home, just really how bad the damage was. So far, the Fed and the OCC have disclosed very little of what I've asked for. So the question I have is how the people I represent in Massachusetts who believe they were cheated, or the 4 million people who receive checks around the country, how they know that the payments they're receiving are fair if the Fed and the OCC won't disclose details about what they uncovered in the investigation.
Well, as you know, we stopped the investigation well before all 4.2 million borrowers were analyzed, so we don't have that information for everybody, but we do have it for some folks, and we are looking to see if we can find a way to get that information to the individuals who whose files were evaluated by the independent consultants.
Good. Yeah. So we're talking about getting that information to them and releasing more information about what you did find in the aggregate?
Yes, we hope to have a report on this whole thing within the next couple of months.
Good.
That will lay out basically all the information we have. Some of the things that you've requested, frankly, we just didn't collect, or whatever. But we will try to provide as much transparency as we can.
I would be very grateful for that, Mr. Chairman. You know my concerns in this area generally, that if the regulators are not aggressive enough, if they don't require admission of guilt, if they never take large financial institutions to trial, then the resulting settlements are too weak. And so I know you appreciate that a slap on the wrist is not enough. And if the OCC and the Fed are confident that these are good settlements, I think it helps everyone if the information's out there. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
I'd like to add that, of course, the people who receive checks have not yielded their legal rights, and they could pursue this further if they wish.
Yes. And I hope that by revealing this information, they will be able to better evaluate whether or not that's appropriate for them. Thank you.